They sent the blind man to drive deliveries as a prank, but the boss made him partner instead. Elias stood there, the heavy keys cold in his palm, the metallic scent of exhaust and stale coffee hanging in the air of Swift Shift Logistics loading bay. Rick snickered, nudging Terry with an elbow. Their cruel grins stretched wide as they watched him, a cheap phone held aloft to capture the expected disaster. "All right, Elias. Big day," Rick drawled, his voice thick with fake concern. "Got the morning route. Looks like a tricky one. Plenty of tight turns, busy intersections. Think you can handle it, champ?" The van, a rusted-out manual with more dents than paint, sat idling, a cloud of blue smoke puffing from its tailpipe. Elias's stomach churned, a familiar acid taste rising in his throat. He'd lost his sight in a factory accident 5 years ago, a jagged shard of metal taking his world in an instant, and every day since had been a struggle against the condescension, the pity, the outright dismissal. He could hear their unspoken words, loud and clear. Asterisk, he can't even see. What's he doing here? A joke? Asterisk, his cheeks burned. A deep flush. He knew they couldn't see, but he felt it. A physical manifestation of shame. He swallowed the lump in his throat, making it hard to speak. I can try. His voice came out as a reedy whisper, barely audible over the rumbling engine. Mara, the dispatcher, a woman built like a brick wall, and with a reputation for a tongue sharper than any knife, strode into the bay. Her boots clanked on the concrete, a sound Elias had learned to recognize as a precursor to either terse instruction or withering sarcasm. She stopped, hands on hips, her silhouette a solid block against the weak morning light filtering through the high windows. "What in hell is going on here?" Her voice was a low growl. Rick quickly lowered his phone, his smirk faltering. "Just helping Elias get started. Mara, Mr. Harrison assigned him the route, said everyone needs a chance." His tone was sickly sweet. Mara's eyes, as cold and gray as a winter sky, flicked from Rick's face to Elias, lingering on his pale, uncertain features. She saw the keys, the van, the phone, and the barely suppressed laughter. "Get back to your own damn roots," she snapped, her gaze searing Rick and Terry. "I'll handle this." They shuffled off, grumbling, but not before Terry mouthed, "Asterisk, good luck. Blindy." Asterisk, just loud enough for Elias to hear, the words twisting a fresh knot in his gut. He stood frozen, wishing the concrete floor would open up and swallow him whole. "You really think you can do this?" Mara asked, her voice devoid of any warmth. It wasn't a question of belief, more a challenge, a test of will. Elias knew it. He straightened his shoulders, forcing himself to meet her invisible gaze. "I can try, ma'am." The formality felt stiff, but he wanted to show respect. He'd been trying his whole life, hadn't he? "Trying ain't doing, son," she retorted. But then, to his shock, she took a beat. She sighed, a deep, weary sound. "All right, give me the keys." He fumbled them towards the sound of her voice, his hands trembling. She caught them with surprising gentleness. "Get in the passenger seat." His heart pounded, a frantic drum against his ribs. He shuffled around the front of the van, Mara guiding him with a terse, "Left tote no. Asterisk, your asterisk left," until he found the door. The seat was ripped, springs poking through the worn fabric. He pulled the door shut, the metal groaning in protest. Mara climbed into the driver's seat, the engine sputtering to life beneath her command. She backed out of the bay with a screech of tires that made Elias flinch. "Okay, here's how this is going to work," she said, her voice gruff, but holding a hint of something he couldn't quite place. "You got the manifest. You tell me where to go. Every turn, every stop. You're the eyes, I'm the hands. Got it." That first day was a blur of grinding gears, Mara's sharp instructions, and Elias's desperate attempt to map the city in his mind. He knew the general layout from before the accident, but the smaller streets, the one-way signs, the subtle shifts in terrain were all lost to him. He focused, straining his ears to catch the nuances of traffic. The change in pavement beneath the tires, the faint smells of bakeries and exhaust. "Next left, Mara," he'd call out, his voice thin, referring to the worn manifest page he held close, its raised print painstakingly memorized. He could feel the van leaning into the turn, hear her grunts of effort as she wrestled the heavy steering wheel. Hours stretched into an eternity. His hands, though not on the wheel, ached from clutching the armrest, and his stomach rumbled, empty and protesting. He made a mistake, misreading a street number, and Mara swore, a stream of colorful curses that made him wince. "You gotta be sharper than that." "Elias," she snapped, but then, surprisingly, she added, "We don't got all day to mess around. People are waiting on these packages." When they finally pulled back into the Swift Shift lot, the sun already dipping low, Elias was shaking with exhaustion. His muscles screamed, his head throbbed. He'd delivered every package, walking up unfamiliar driveways, feeling for doorbells, listening for sounds of life. As he stepped out of the van, Mara tossed him a half-empty water bottle. "You did good work today, Elias," she said, her voice gruff, but the words were a balm to his raw nerves. He took a long drink, the cool water a small blessing. The next few weeks fell into a grueling rhythm. Elias and Mara became an unlikely pair, a strange, silent tandem. He navigated by memory, by the subtle slope of the roads, the distinct sound of the train crossing 3 blocks east of the industrial park, the scent of the magnolia tree outside the old library. He learned Mara's signals. A sharp brake meant a sudden stop. A quick acceleration meant an open lane. He was learning to feel the city again. Each morning, Rick and Terry would watch, their sneers becoming a little less confident, a little more puzzled. Still got the blind guy driving. Mara, Rick would call out, his voice laced with venom. He gonna run us into a ditch one of these days, Mara. We'll just fix him with a stare that promised pain. Elias kept his head down, focused on the manifest. On the task, he still heard their words, the mocking whispers, the cruel jokes about eyes on the road. He still repeated them to himself sometimes. Late at night, in the quiet of his small apartment. Worthless, dependent, a burden. One particularly brutal afternoon. The heat, oppressive, and packages heavy, Elias found himself struggling up a long flight of stairs to an apartment building, his leg, still bothering him from the factory accident. Burned with a dull ache, he stumbled, catching himself before he fell, sweat stinging his eyes. He heard Mara's voice, surprisingly close. Need a hand, Elias? He shook his head, pride stinging more than the pain. I got it. But his voice wavered. She said nothing more. But a moment later, a pair of thick, worn leather gloves landed on the step beside him. Blisters ain't gonna help you carry anything. She grunted, then turned and walked back down. Elias stared at the gloves, thick and soft, worn smooth from countless hours of work. He slid his hands into them. They fit perfectly, a small, unexpected kindness that chipped away at the wall around his heart. A few days later, a critical package, marked fragile and urgent, needed to go across town, through a notoriously chaotic traffic hub. Rick and Terry, seeing an opportunity, had deliberately mislabeled the route on the manifest. Elias realized the error too late, sending Mara into a one-way street against traffic. She slammed on the brakes, horns blaring around them. What the hell, Elias? She roared, her face flushed with anger. You trying to get us killed? Elias stammered, his mind racing. It said, the manifest. It was wrong. His words tangled. He felt a fresh wave of humiliation wash over him. Rick and Terry had been lurking, and now they appeared, feigning concern, their eyes alight with malicious satisfaction. Looks like our sight-temp driver is a menace. Mara, Rick chuckled. Maybe Mr. Harrison needs to hear about this. Mara's jaw tightened. She looked at Elias, at his shaking hands, his pale face, then her gaze hardened, fixing on the two men. Get lost, she snarled, her voice low and dangerous. He just made a mistake. Unlike you two, who make mistakes on purpose. She turned to Elias, her eyes still blazing. We'll get this done. Elias, just tell me how to get us out of this damn mess. He took a deep breath, focusing, pushing back the fear. He listened to the traffic, the echoes off the buildings. Mara, turn right at the next corner. We can loop around the construction. He found his voice, strong and clear. She did, expertly maneuvering the van through the chaos. They made the delivery, late, but intact. That evening, back in the quiet of the office, Mara sat across from him. You know why I'm always on your ass, Elias? She asked, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. He shook his head. I had a kid sister, little Spitfire, always getting into trouble, and I was supposed to look out for her. One time, I didn't. She was gone in a flash, hit by a car. I was supposed to be her eyes, and I failed. Her voice cracked, a raw, exposed wound. Elias's chest ached in sympathy. I was in a factory, he began, his own voice hesitant. When it happened, big machine. Someone didn't bolt it right. Lights out, just like that. And then, everyone. They looked at me like I was broken, like I couldn't do anything. He paused, a painful memory. I just wanted to prove them wrong. She nodded, a silent acknowledgement of shared pain. The quiet hung heavy between them, thick with understanding. The next week, Mr. Harrison, the owner, arrived for his quarterly inspection. He was a stern man, rarely seen, who ruled swift shift logistics with an iron fist. Rick and Terry saw their chance. They cornered Harrison, spinning a tale of Ilias's incompetence, the near miss on the one-way street, exaggerating every minor error. He's a liability, sir, Rick declared, puffing out his chest. A danger to company assets and reputation. We worry about our customers. Harrison listened, his gaze unreadable. He called Elias and Mara into his office. Elias, I hear you've been having some difficulties on the road. His voice was cold, formal. Elias's heart hammered against his ribs. This was it. The end. Mara stepped forward, before he could even form a coherent sentence. Sir, she began, her voice steady. Elias has been the best navigator this company has ever seen. That difficulty was because those two jackals, she jabbed a finger towards Rick and Terry, who stood smirking by the door, deliberately sabotaged his manifest. He still got the delivery there, and he did it by relying on his wits, not just his eyes. He listens to the city in a way those two could never understand. Her voice grew louder, resonating with conviction. He's not a liability, Mr. Harrison, he's an asset, and if you let him go, You're losing the only man who knows these streets better than any GPS. The only man who still cares about getting the job done right, no matter what. She looked at Elias then, and for the first time, he saw not just strength in her eyes, but fierce, unyielding pride. He's earned his place here. Mr. Harrison leaned back in his chair, his gaze shifting from Mara to Elias, then to the two stunned figures in the doorway. He drummed his fingers on his desk, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. Rick and Terry's smug expressions had vanished, replaced by open-mouthed shock. "Is this true, Elias?" Harrison asked, his voice unexpectedly gentle. "Did they deliberately mislead you?" Elias, finding a new well of courage, nodded. "Yes, sir. But Mara, she helped me. I learned the routes. I listened. I remember." He straightened, a quiet dignity settling over him. Harrison considered them all for a long moment, the air thick with unspoken tension. "Mara," he finally said, "you've been with Swift Shift for 15 years. You know the business inside and out. And Elias, you've shown grit and determination I haven't seen in a long time." He looked directly at Rick and Terry. "As for you two, your actions are unacceptable. You're both on probation. Any more of this, and you'll be looking for new employment." Their faces fell, crimson with embarrassment and rage. Harrison then turned back to Elias, a faint smile touching his lips. "Elias, I need someone with your unique perspective and dedication, someone who truly understands efficiency and problem-solving, even when the obvious path is blocked. You've earned more than a driver's route." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "I'm making you a partner in logistics. Mara will train you on the administrative side, and you'll oversee all route planning and delivery coordination. You've proven you can navigate any challenge. You'll be taking Swift Shift into a new era." Elias stood there, a tidal wave of emotion washing over him. The tight throat, the burning cheeks, the shame he'd carried for so long, all began to recede, replaced by a surge of disbelief. Then profound, undeniable pride. Rick and Terry stood speechless, their cruel prank having backfired spectacularly. The blind man they'd sought to humiliate had not only driven deliveries, but he had driven himself to the very top. The joke, it turned out, was entirely on them. Thank you for coming this far. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city and state in the comments below. What's one time someone underestimated you, and you proved them wrong? I read every single comment, and I love hearing from you. And if you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button.